Welcome to the Freemium Podcast. Today, Jason Primak, a good friend of mine. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
It's a beautiful day here in Montreal, and this podcast gets released usually like a week or 2 weeks after. But I definitely want to start off. So it's probably going to be old news by the time it's released, but we can probably still get some clips off this. So that debate last night was hilarious.
What a time. What a time that was.
Yeah, like I can't believe. I don't know. It's like it's a sad state of. It's funny. It's sad. It's worrying. It's troubling. It's. I don't know. But there's also like the other part of me that kind of thinks it doesn't really matter. Like I feel we're kind of in a position now where it doesn't really matter who the president or who the prime minister is. I feel like the institutions that control everything are going to continue to control everything. Like I don't think a president or a new prime minister coming in is actually going to be able to make changes that they claim they're going to make. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think yesterday was great for the meme content. That's for sure.
Oh God, was it ever? What was your favorite line?
It had to be the golf. It had to be when they started attacking each other over their golf handicaps.
That's never happened in a presidential debate.
That's insane.
I've seen his swing. He's not a 6 handicap.
You have like the two leaders of like one of each party, your two biggest parties in the U.S., and then the guy's just like, I've seen his swing. He's not a 6.
And then there was another line. I was just watching it before, and there was another line too where he goes, what did Trump say? He says, he goes, I've won 2 club championships, not the senior club championships, the regular club championships. You got to be smart. You got to hit the ball a long way. I've seen the way he hits the ball. He can't hit the ball further than 50 yards. You know what I mean? And he goes, I'm a 6 handicap. And he kind of like walked off into, He's like walking. And I kept taking photos of his face last night. Because every single time, when they would cut to the camera.
And they're the side-by-side?
Yeah. And he's literally just so old, not able to speak, not able to think. And it's like, what is it with these guys that, I guess we can kind of talk about politics a little bit. What is it with these guys that don't want to let go of power? It's the same thing with Trudeau. And like they won't say it on the media. Like another MP isn't going to trash talk Trudeau in front of other, like on the media. But I promise you, behind closed doors, the Liberal Party in Canada, they're having the same conversation going, dude, this guy cannot be our leader. We're going to get absolutely fucking walloped in the next election. They just had the by-election in Toronto. They lost, which is supposed to be a Liberal stronghold. Mm-hmm. And, like, what is it with these guys that just don't – like, why do they not let go of power? Like, you're supposed to be a leader, and a good leader would recognize when it's their time to step down.
I don't know. It's a funny thing. I think part of it, too, goes back to your previous point, though, is that just these guys have been in it, and they're in it for so long, and the party stands behind them. And historically speaking, at least in the U.S., what they're saying is that if the president who's up and coming and running again, if they step down and someone else goes in, the other party's going to win. So I think a lot of it has to do with the history. I don't know how much Biden really wants to be there right now, to be perfectly honest with you.
I mean, he's going to be, like, he's 82. He's 82 years old, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people die. If you, like both my grandfathers, when they passed away, they were 82. Yeah. So it's not, and I'm honest, I'm not even trying to shit talk him right now. No. It's like, dude, you're 82 years old. If you were to get reelected, if you were to die of natural causes during his next term, if he was to win, like no one would actually be surprised.
No,
you know what I mean?
It's
like if you die at 84, 85 years old, that's still a good life.
It was sad. It was sad to watch. I feel like the Democrats have like a lot of questions that need to be answered right now. Like, how could you put this guy up there? And they're saying, oh no, he's doing cartwheels in our private meetings. He's fine. Like, look at him. And then they put him up there and you're like, guys.
He can't do anything. And there's always clips coming up of Biden. So he was at the G7 recently. He's like wandering and walking around aimlessly. Yeah. They had to have the prime minister or the president, I forget which one, of Italy. It was kind of like
helping him around.
Yeah, grabbing his hand.
Yeah.
And at the same time, too, you look at Trudeau. Did you see the clip where, so they're all in a circle talking, and Trudeau was kind of like, like the kid who's being bullied in elementary school?
Okay, I didn't see it.
And he's trying to, anyways, so there's a clip, and if this ends up getting clipped, we can show this clip. So it's a clip basically of all the leaders, and then you have Trudeau right behind. He's trying to like get into the circle.
Yeah.
And he can't get into the circle. Like they're literally just
blocking him out essentially.
And so he's standing there trying to, play it off all cool. Yeah. But it's so obvious that nobody takes this guy seriously.
Yeah.
And then they have the photo after, and he yells, "Zustana Ukraine." You're Ukrainian,
Oh,
right?
yeah, exactly.
There's a
That's
free
what
Ukraine or
it's
something.
Free Ukraine, essentially.
It was so cringe.
And it was just out of the blue. Like, I saw that clip too, and everyone's kind of like looking, and it's just like a weird, sad situation. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's a lot of it comes down to these guys do crave the power, and once they have it, I don't know what it is about it. They just don't want to let it go. Maybe it's an ego thing. Maybe it's just something to do with, like, they really want to fight to the bitter end. But I think on the flip side, at the end of the day, whoever's in that position, I think what yesterday showed us the most is that it really doesn't matter. Those parties have the people who run them regardless, and the people behind closed doors pulling all the strings, and they'll just put anyone out there, and they'll put whoever they think is going to get the most votes and draw the most crowds. And for them, at the end of the day, they know they're the ones pulling all the strings. And I think for me, that was kind of the saddest part is, like, you look at the U.S., that's supposed to be the greatest power in the world, and it's just a comedy show.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally a comedy show.
And there's also, but there's no chance, like, even today, there's 0% chance that Joe Biden is the guy making the decisions for the country. I don't think he has any influence. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that guy has any influence. Who would take him seriously?
Yeah.
If you're in a room with that guy and he's 82 years old, my father's 68 years old.
And you don't even take him seriously.
No, and I don't take him seriously. Yeah. No, there's a lot of things sometimes too, but there's, like, it's just a natural cause. It's, he's pretty well retired, but people like you and me, we're doing this every single day, so our brains are sharper. So when it comes to decisions about the business, and he's making recommendations like today versus 8 years ago or something, I mean, he's not nearly as sharp. I think it's a bit of the old age. He's not stupid, I'm not saying that. So I think it's a bit of just older age, but also too, like, you're not practicing that muscle memory in your brain
as often. And
well, it's like doing exercise. If you don't exercise for 6 months and all of a sudden you start exercising again, it's very difficult at the beginning, but you can get back to it. So it's,
well, if you're younger, when you get older, it comes a whole other battle too, right? So, but then on the flip side too, you got Trump, who's just like, I don't know where this guy's brain is at. He's like so schizophrenic half the time, and you're just like, this is nuts. This is nuts. At least
he's just blurbing out a lot of shit.
Yeah.
If I'm the Democrats right now, you're gonna be like, okay, we're guaranteed to lose this guy. Like, we cannot win.
Yeah.
You're probably going to lose anyways if you put another candidate. I think it's too late.
Yeah.
But if I'm weighing my odds, I'm going to go, you know what? There's no chance we're going to win with Biden. We're not going to win with Kamala Harris. Maybe we could win with a new candidate like a Gavin Newsom, the governor of California.
Yeah.
He's nice and woke, so maybe he'll be able to maybe they'll be able to do something with that.
I mean, at the end of the day, whoever they end up going with, I think they're in a big uphill battle, because they gambled on essentially having no primaries and just going straight with Biden, because they were worried that already then that would kind of weaken his position, because he'd have to do extra debates and it would tire him out. But I think that plan backfired heavily, because I think all the Democrats who are kind of on the fence, or at least like maybe on the Dem side, that are hoping that this guy's still okay but don't really know much, after yesterday you're looking at it and you're looking at the party and you're going, what do we do?
I don't know, but we can get back to that later. But let's touch base a little bit. So, we got a bunch of things that we're going to talk about today. So, Trump, Biden, we kind of just mentioned that. Poilievre versus Trudeau, state of Canada. Kind of do a little focus on Canada. I got a little table here for, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it.
I was looking at it yesterday, actually.
So, just basically the cost of housing, and a lot of it has to do with the development charges and the taxes and all that stuff that the municipalities, federal government charge to just build houses. And a lot of people, so my buddy Mike Curry would say it's the greedy developers that are making all the money. Those are the ones, that's why housing is so expensive in Canada. When if you actually dig down and look at the details, the amount of tax and development charges that Canadian governments have started to charge since the early 2000s is absolutely insane.
It was up like 200% or something, you were saying, no?
Dude, since the early 2000s, it's up 9,000%.
Yeah.
But let's talk about you first, though. Your company, GEON.
Yes, sir.
What do you do there?
So I'm the regional manager for Canada for GEON. We're what's called a compounder in the plastics industry.
Okay.
So very simply, we make plastic pellets and powder, and we sell that across North America to different extruders and molders and essentially anyone who makes anything out of these types of plastics.
Yeah.
Now, when I say plastics, I'll differentiate. It's got a bit of a bad rep right now. A lot of the single-use stuff, we don't really touch any of that. No plastic bottles, no straws, nothing like that. Yeah. Us, it's really focused on heavily the construction sector, so building and infrastructures, so all your water wells, pipes, anything that's windows, doors, pool accessories. So these are like a lot of the big markets that we touch on in North America. And then we basically just compound in various different applications. So we can add a little bit of like science behind the base plastic, so to speak, and give it different properties and performance depending what you need. So if you need a soft rubber or something more performant, then we can do that too.
And so can you tell the story of when we went? This is for like the salespeople out there. Can you tell the story of when you were going to Toronto and I came to Toronto with you?
Yeah, for sure.
I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I touched basically all of Canada, and a big hub for us is Toronto. Obviously, the Brampton area, especially. Yeah. A lot of manufacturing out there.
Okay, so I was gonna say why Brampton? There's a lot of manufacturing.
Just a lot of manufacturing. I guess over the years, I'm not really too privy of the history of that area, but same thing like around us, right? We kind of have those like sectors, like Montreal East, you have a lot. Now South Shore, you have a lot. North Shore a bit. So I don't know. Brampton just ended up becoming this like hub where at the time it was called, I think, Royal Plastics, and that was like one of the largest fenestration companies. So they made windows, and they were just massive. And then from there spun off, a bunch of people left and started their own businesses. And from that, over time,
is that company still there?
I don't know if it got bought out or if it just kind of changed ownership. It's called Vision now, Vision Group.
Okay.
And they're probably the biggest supplier for windows in North America right now. And they're a customer of ours, but they do a lot of stuff themselves, which is what kind of helped them go over the top, I would say, in that sector. But yeah, like you said, we ended up kind of being in Toronto at the same time. I think you were there for a conference, and I was doing...
No, I wasn't there for anything. I just wanted to go to Toronto.
Oh, well, fair enough. Must be nice. President KBD, there you go.
Yeah.
But so I was doing some customer visits, and I know you were trying to get your foothold in on the Ontario market. And I had a couple of guys that, I know you're professional, and I thought it'd be fun if you did a little ride along. At the end of the day, like I think we handled it pretty well. We met one of my guys, Gus out of Duredge, and he's a funny character. So I just wanted to introduce you guys and see if there could be anything there. Obviously, we talked our stuff first, and it was pretty hilarious. You're just sitting next to me, and then I got my business with him, and then I just remember him kind of finishing up with me and looking over you, and then he goes,
"Fuck's this guy?
What are you here for?"
No, that was good. Shem, we literally, I went over to Toronto. I was like, hey, I want to sell some manufacturing insurance to some of your clients and stuff. He's like, okay, sure. I didn't think he was going to be this, open to the fact. But it was cool to kind of see, you didn't give a shit. And I think that's just kind of speaks to you've been doing sales for what now?
10 years. 10 years, yeah.
I think it just speaks you're obviously comfortable, and the way you carried yourself. If you were a novice salesperson, you most likely would have been you wouldn't have been comfortable with it.
I don't think I would have signed you up for that either. I would have been too nervous or just not wanting to ruffle any feathers.
But when you go into these sales meetings, I guess because they're already existing clients, do you ever get nervous anymore, or never?
I would say the only time I get a little bit nervous would be either trying to close a really big deal, or if there's a really big issue and they're looking to really rectify some major problem. So typically that's not too often, at least on the major problem side. Big deals, I would love a few more of those, don't get me wrong. But no, I think for the day-to-day, I don't know, my strategy has always been, especially over the years, I really like to prepare for my calls. I know a lot of people, it's everyone says the same thing, but it is true. If you're prepped for the call and prepped for the meeting, there's really no reason to be nervous for it. I like to have an agenda, and we try to follow it as best as possible. And over time you kind of develop your different tactics and how to handle different situations. And I think no, that was fun. I don't think I would have done that with the majority of my clients, but I knew that there was definitely one or two that easygoing, and honestly, it just kind of. I also wanted to try it as almost a social experiment, to just see kind of what happened out of it. And I don't think, unfortunately, that one worked out right for you.
No, none of them worked out. I mean, I followed up. I followed up with Dio. I must have followed up with that guy. I'm not even exaggerating, probably 9 times.
Okay. It's tough to get a hold of.
You didn't pick up the call once. Not once. And it was funny when you were having lunch with them, and then you text me, say, hey, he said to call him right now. I called him a minute later.
Yeah.
I called him. He didn't pick up the phone.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that was probably a month or two later. We were having
off.
lunch, just catching up.
Yeah. But I'm sure he's a nice guy, but that's okay. But what would you say for, like, obviously you've been pretty successful at sales. Like, what would you say is the biggest reason why you have success in that profession doing sales? Because you did start off doing cold calling, which you've mentioned many times really helped.
That definitely
get you started.
helped. Definitely helped.
And then you worked on the construction side. We can talk about that after. And then now you're selling, you're an engineer by trade.
By trade.
Yeah,
that's it.
So like, what's the biggest reason why you think you've had success in sales? Because there's like a lot of people too, like for a lot of, especially men, there's women too, but a lot of younger guys, I mean, especially if they don't have a degree and they want to make money, they're probably going to go into sales.
Yeah.
That's if you want to be in service, chances are you're not going to make as much money as you would in sales, especially for someone, I know I'm repeating myself, but especially for someone who doesn't have like a certification or if you're coming in, you just got to learn how to sell. So like, what's the biggest reason why you're good at it?
I think for me, like at the end of the day, it's just realizing that, people buy from people and you really have to be yourself at a certain point. Like maybe if you're an asshole, don't go and be an asshole to the client. But at the same time, at the end of the day, like you have to realize that there's definitely still a personal aspect to it. And you can read as much sales strategy as you want. And obviously it's really good to have. You got to be prepared for the meetings. But I think for me at the end of the day is... When
you say prepared, sorry to cut you off there, like what can you be more specific?
Yeah, sure. Like, going in with like a clearly defined agenda, whether it's either written down or in your head. So you always want to have at least 1 or 2 issues or 1 or 2 topics that you want to discuss. So if you're trying to make a new sale, you're controlling the conversation and you're trying to get them to open up. Because if you're just coming into a meeting and you're just kind of shooting the shit and like, hey, what's up? How's it going? What's your problem? Like the customer's not really going to respond to that, right? So I think for me, that's like the biggest thing is like really knowing. And I'm kind of lucky. Like now I'm in a market where like I've been working with these clients now for almost 5 years. So you really get to know them, their problems. But when it's like someone new, like you have to have at least an idea of like some of the right questioning and like how you want to kind of flow the conversation. So if you're going into a meeting and you're looking to say get a new account going and you're in the plastic sector and you got to get in there and you really have to have your homework done identifying, okay, where could I be a fit before you go in? Then you come in, you introduce yourself, you can give a little bit of your personal charisma or whatever, but you have to ask pretty pointed questions that are still open and make sure that you're not just in there to just be there, kind of thing. So I think for me, that was the biggest thing. And then always just following up. Like follow-ups are huge and actually whatever you identified in that meeting, if you're not following through with that after, that client or potential client's just going to be looking at you like, okay, well, that guy's just another seller, that's just another person through my door. And if you actually show them like, okay, I'm going to try to do this for you, or I can do this for you, or let me go back and find out about this and get back to you within the next, say, 2 days, and you actually do that, that just slowly builds, right? Like that adds. And I think that's like something that I've really like taken a big stance on is like really making sure you follow through with those commitments. Because as soon as you start letting those slide, then they kind of get like a view of you that maybe you're not really as true to your word as you are.
It's very simple in practice. Just do what you say you're going to do, and under promise, over deliver. That's a little trick too that I try and do as much as possible.
For sure.
Where example, it's a Monday. All right, I'll get back to you by Wednesday, Thursday, and get back to them, and I'll know I can get this by the next day, and I'll send to them on a Tuesday.
100%.
And then sometimes they're like, oh damn, this guy's on top of his shit.
Yeah.
I love doing that. Little trick. Under promise, over deliver.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
I use that one as well too. Sometimes when, you can only get, for me, it's like a lot of like quotes and like building up new product specs and like things like that. So typically that could take anywhere from like a day or 2 to a month, depending on like sort of the level or the degree or the project. Exactly. So depending on what that is, at least now, as you get more experience, you kind of have an idea of what that timeline is. And then you can always kind of try to buffer it a little bit so that when you deliver on time or earlier, then they're like, oh, you're right. Yeah, this guy, he did it. Good job.
But there's also stuff too, and this was actually something that Rob told me, and Rob learned this from his former boss, and I don't know why this stuck in my head. So he had just started his career in insurance, and his boss was next to him, and he was just listening to him on the phone call, and Rob was, he was trying to do the best job. And he was saying, I'll get this for you tomorrow. I'll get this for you Wednesday. I forget exactly what it was, but he was making promises that were outside of his control, because ultimately it's kind of the same thing for us as a broker. We're technically at the mercy of the underwriter, because the underwriter are the people for the insurance companies are the people that give the quotes. So if the underwriter takes a week, 2 weeks, I mean, that's completely out of my control. I can follow up with them, but they're the ones providing the quote, and I got to present it to the client. So what Rob's boss said was, after Rob got off the call, he goes, "You're promising way too much." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He goes, You're going to be stressed now because you said you're going to get this by Wednesday, and now you're going to be up the underwriter's ass." And he goes, "It's completely out of your control, and the underwriter most likely will not give you the quote by Wednesday." So he said, slow down a little bit, set the expectations for the client.
Exactly.
Make it a little bit longer. And sometimes too, even though clients bit, can you get a little quicker? And if you're like, there's no chance I can get that quicker, I can get this to you by that date. Just again, kind of, it's like setting expectations.
And being transparent. Like, sorry, I can't do that. Like, you can be as mad as you want at me, but I can't commit to that, and I'm sorry, but that's what it is. And I think people respect that a lot more than the opposite. Like Rob's boss, who's saying, tomorrow, not probably writing anything down either, not having any idea of what he committed to.
And and I find like a lot of junior salespeople will do that, and it's coming from a good place. It's
for sure.
It's good intentions. They'll be like, I'll get this for you right away, and they're gonna try as to provide the product or the service in a timely manner as fast as they can. But I feel like they don't realize that there's so much outside of their control. And then the only person who's going to be stressed is yourself, the salesperson. And it's not in your control.
And that comes a lot with experience too, right? It's like you get these clients sometimes, and they're hard asses. They're on you. So it's intimidating. And if you don't have that experience and you're not able to sort of stand up for yourself, like you said, at the beginning, it can be a little daunting for sure. To like, you don't know how far you can really push someone back, or like, like when to challenge and when not to. So it's like, that's all kind of skills that like come over time. And it's crazy to say, like, you just made me realize, like, it's been 10 years now that I've been doing sales after engineering. So it's kind of, time flies.
I have a question. What's something as a salesperson that you hate when clients do X? What's something you hate in the sense that like it's just you really don't appreciate it, and obviously without naming names?
I guess. Well, the easy one is for sure when they're just like, price. I think everyone gets that one. So it's like, I know there's an underlying issue there, and I know there's something else other than that, but that's obviously number one. And then number two,
when they're like, I don't give a shit about the added value of your product. I don't care about this. I don't care about the service. What's your price?
What's the price? This guy's at this price, so why aren't you below it, kind of thing, And it's just like assuming that it's even the exact same thing, or in like the service. And again, the same person that's servicing you, right? Like there's the whole customer service side of it too, that even like we're technically in a commodity market. Like it's commoditized, it's on an index, it goes up and down with an index, the prices of plastics. And at the end of the day, it's like there's still a big value add there, because depending who you're working with, there's quality differences, there's difference in how you're served and serviced. So that's definitely number one. And number two, I guess, is just like when they can be strict assholes about stuff. Like, like they're just like, don't really understand the process behind things, and they're like, oh, why can't you just do this for me? I mean, overall, like I'm very blessed in the sense of like where I'm at in terms of my career and like my clientele. Like I'm handling like some pretty big accounts in Canada, and I would say for the most part like 95% of the business owners, because I'm typically dealing with business owners or general managers, they're in it just like you are to make money, and you can help each other do that, right? And it's more of a partnership than anything else. So I'd say the majority of my clients, that's really like the way we look at it. And obviously there's going to be things where you disagree on, and there's always little problems here and there that come around. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing, going back to the original point, is just like really understanding like yourself, your own value, and being prepared and following through, like simply put.
What's the split between, because I understand the fact you have a lot of, you have a book of business, I guess we can call it that, or you have a list of, you have a bunch of clients that you serve.
Yeah.
What's the split between prospecting for new clients and clients reselling to existing clients? Like, would it be 20%?
Probably about 80-20, I'd say.
80%
existing.
Okay, and then 20% prospecting for new clients and stuff like that? Okay.
Because it's a very like specific market, right? Like it's not like tomorrow you decide to open a business and you're like, I'm going to make plastic pipes. Like it really takes a lot of experience. You have to have the right equipment. You have to have a warehouse. You have to have the right people. It's like
big capital expenditure, like investment to actually start a new factory. Like if you want to build a manufacturing plant, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars to get that done.
And so a lot of it is like, actually it's kind of like sad in a way, is like people are getting scooped up by other businesses and then they're merging. And then so really you end up trying to just gain back accounts that you probably had back in the day that you've lost to a competitor. Like there's always cool little niche markets that are coming up. Like now I just, you were talking to me about your buddy there who does the bottles. So that's like one that like, you know, maybe that's something down the road.
Coming up, I'm definitely going to slip.
Yeah, the skincare bottles, exactly. So, I mean, like, it's cool. And, like, our company's growing too, right? So, we've advanced our portfolio. So, that opens new doors for me too. So, yeah, I'd say, like, probably 20-25% is, like, going after new clients. Would I love it to be 50, 75%, 100%? I would love that. But
you like that more than servicing existing clients?
I mean, I love that. I love going after
harder,
sales.
Though.
It's hard. It's a grind for sure. But
like prospecting, people that don't work in sales, I don't think they understand, and I can relate because it's like commercial insurance. For prospecting for commercial insurance, it's very difficult. Exactly like you, it's very niche. You have to understand the product. You have to understand the business that you're trying to serve. You have to, like, it's not easy at all.
No.
And it's not built for everyone. And there's a lot of rejection.
There's so much rejection.
It's way more rejection. Like people they don't understand that. Let's say, for example, cold calling. If you close 2% of cold calls, that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are like, well, hold on a second. So you mean 98% say no? Yeah, that's correct. But how it actually ends up working is, and let me know if you agree because you've done more cold calling than me. So if you have like let's say a list of 100, 50 of them, you're never going to talk to them.
Yeah, or like you'll like randomly catch them for 10 seconds, they'll hang up on you.
Yeah, exactly. But like 50 of them, you'll leave a voicemail, you'll call, you'll never get in touch with the person. So right off the bat, you're not going to talk to them. Another pile of them are going to say no, fuck off. Another pile of them are going to waste your time and dick you around. And then you're going to have a small portion, at least this is my experience, that are actually, okay, I'm open to this.
Yeah.
And then even for me, because sometimes even when they're open to it, I still can't help them.
Yeah.
And then you have the even smaller portion of people that are open to it and that I can help.
For sure.
So you're left to this, but all that work.
And that are open to you helping them.
Correct.
Even on top of that, I would say.
And so all that time, because you're spending a lot of time filtering through all that other 98%.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely exhausting. But like, so why do you like it? Like, I think I'm getting to a point now in my age, like, not that I'm old, I'm 35, but like the sales, I don't have as much patience as I did 5 years ago for a new business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you like that, or?
Look, I think for me, it's also, I should differentiate one of two things, is that you're in a business where essentially almost everyone needs insurance, right?
Yeah.
So you can call up anyone, and that's almost the time where you find out, is this a fit or not, technically based on wherever they're at.
Yeah.
I'm in more of a market where I kind of have an idea already going in when I'm cold calling. You know what I mean? I'm not just cold calling anyone. I already see what the company does from their website or word of mouth, or I know other people who are in competition with this company. So I think for me, the way that I've kind of evolved into cold calling is much different than like what it is for someone in your market. Like when I started at the company was called Marcus Evans, and it was like conferences, and you would just basically hammer out like 100 calls a day to CEOs of like big companies trying to sign them up for like a $50,000-$60,000 conference in like Vegas or Texas. It was the most wild thing ever. But straight out of engineering, I was like, I don't really love this right now. I did a few internships. So I tried that, and I did that for almost 2 years, and I got my ass handed to me a bunch of times.
Every day, all day, cold calling, and then like prospecting a little bit, and then back to cold calling. And then you randomly get to go to the conferences if you were actually getting customers and sales. Yeah. But some of the people who sucked at it for like 2 years, they were just at their desk every day, just cold calling. Like, it was insane. So that's kind of where I got my touch. So that's where I understand where you're coming from. That's where those numbers come from. But I think for me, like I said, it's a little bit different because it's a more specialized space. And what you're doing right now.
What I'm doing right now, right? And so it's like, yes, it's a cold call, but it's almost like a warmer call because like you're still a material supplier and they know that.
Do most of the clients or prospects that you're calling, do they know who you are?
They know a lot of them know my company.
Okay.
My company's been around for 80 to 100 years in the space. Like,
they have
that
a good
helps.
Reputation.
Yeah. So it's like, it's really like that makes a huge difference,
Yeah.
right? So that's why, like, for me, when you say going after new business, for me, it's fun because the feeling of actually taking a close from A to Z when you first meet someone, like, I'm in the process right now of, like, knock on wood, like, they're in Calgary and it's a company I went to go see now and have had like a few virtual calls with. And
so you're not doing
it was originally we had, well, now we just got our first few orders. We're having a bit of a color issue, but as soon as that's fixed, I think we're going to get like a whole bunch of new business. And like, as soon as that deal was like made and that hand was shaken in Calgary, you're so fired up about it. And that feeling is insane. It's like one of the best. It's like,
it's the
best feeling you can have in sales, you know, like
starting off a cold call. Like, don't get me wrong, having any sale feels good. Having a referral or meeting someone at a networking event still feels good.
Yeah.
No, there is no better feeling than making a sale off of a cold call and a good sale. It is by far the best feeling. Because you're like, damn, I did this. Like, I called this person. They didn't know who I was. They warmed up to me. Mm-hmm. And it's even more rewarding, I find, when you meet them and you break down the barrier. Because it's like, if you go to meet someone, and let me know if you agree, if you go, let's say you cold call someone and you meet someone and they greet you with open arms, well, they're doing that with everybody else.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what, this person's probably just a yes man. Whereas if you meet someone, a prospect, and you walk in and they're cold and you have to break down that barrier, mm-hmm. I much prefer that, because I know that there's going to be a lot of other salespeople when this person's cold coming in, some salespeopeople might not be able to break down the barrier. They might be uncomfortable going, this person's an asshole. I just look at it as kind of like a challenge.
Yeah.
So it's like, I remember this one time I think I told you this story. It was a cold call, and I went to go see this guy in the Saint Laurent Techno Park. I went to go see him. They made concrete products.
Okay.
Stuff that you put basically on houses. So it's kind of like designer concrete stuff to make your house look nice, as opposed to having brick.
Like kind of walls?
Yeah, exactly. Like outdoor, exterior walls.
Yeah, okay.
And I go to see them. They're Russian. I like Russian people. So it's like, because they're very direct. I like that.
They're very direct.
Yeah. So I go in there. He's not being friendly at all, but he's not being an asshole. He's just being very cold.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting down talking to him. There's two owners. And so the other owner, and I'm sitting down in his office, he comes right behind me and they start speaking to each other in Russian. And I can read the body language.
Yeah.
They're trying to intimidate me. Like, I'm telling you, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think I am. They were absolutely trying to intimidate me. And I'm going like, okay, just fucking be cool, be whatever. And I did. I pretended like it didn't bother me. And it didn't really bother me, to be honest. I knew what we're doing. Went back again a second time, got the sale. And as soon as I got the sale, I think they respected the fact that I wasn't a little bitch. And a lot of business owners will do that. They want to test you. They're going to look you up and down. They're going to read your body language. A good business owner will absolutely read your body language. Yeah. So you can say whatever it is you want to say. If you walk in there and you're all shy and you're not commanding, mm-hmm. They read that. They feel that. Sure. They sniff it out. And if they don't respect you, they're probably not going to do business with you either.
I agree. Yeah, so that's a good point too.
It's like some people, and that all has to do with confidence.
Yeah. Confidence and experience as well.
Confidence, experience, knowing your product.
Knowing the product.
And also, too, and you mentioned this at the beginning, don't go in there to just talk your product. The first 5 minutes of an interaction in person, should be rapport building.
Yeah.
Asking questions. Like, I don't even mention anything about me unless they ask me directly. I'm there for the first 5 minutes just trying to build the rapport.
For sure.
And asking questions. And then another little tip that I always try and do is to drop their guard is, and this is like the pre-qualification questions.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll say, well, I don't even know if I can help you. I'm like, I think I can help you, but I need to come in and ask for the questions. So at least that way there, because if you're coming in like, no, I can help everyone, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of not as...
Well,
tacky.
like no one can really no one's got a one size fits all solution either, right? So
Yeah.
if you're just that guy saying, yeah, we can do it all, then that's kind of like an old sales strategy, I find, though. I don't think really many people teach that much anymore and everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just like people can revert to it, though, you know, like you said, if you're nervous or if you're new at it, like it's just like, oh yeah, I could do that. And then you leave. Like I remember when I first started my construction at that construction company, Stonecore, like we were doing like epoxy flooring and fireproofing. And I remember this guy came in and he was like, oh, I need new lines painted in my warehouse. I need this, that. And I was just like so new and so nervous. I was just like, yeah, we can do that for sure. Like, no worries. I'll give you a quote. And then I got out of that meeting and I literally was like, I have no idea what I'm quoting. Like, I literally have just no idea. So it's like, It happens, man. It happens.
Well, we've all been there.
Everyone.
And then when you leave, but you know for next time.
Yeah.
And you learn from your mistakes.
For sure.
And yeah, there's been many times where you're leaving going like, because you'll get stumped sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And you'll leave going like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, like what did I just do?
But you don't make the same mistake again the next time.
No, exactly.
So it's like I'm still learning. I'm always learning, and it just as like everyone, you should be learning and stuff. I still make mistakes and everything too, and sometimes, you know, I look like an idiot, but you know, for the next time. Yeah. What was the? Okay, I want to kind of jump into. We're gonna switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
And because you mentioned the company that you used to work for, I won't name them again, but so that industry there, you have a lot of experience in the construction industry.
Yeah.
And construction in Montreal, it's like hilarious. It's a joke. Nothing ever gets finished on budget. Nothing ever gets finished on time. This is one of the main reasons why I moved from downtown to the West Island.
Yeah.
There's way less construction, way less traffic. But dude, it's like every year it gets worse.
Yeah, it's constantly getting worse.
The permitting process, everything's like why is nothing ever on time in Quebec? No construction project is ever fucking on time, ever. And like everyone complains about it, nothing gets done. The permitting process right now, I was listening to the interview with Valérie Plante and Monsieur Arcan. I forget his first name, but it was in French.
Danielle or something.
But so the average permitting time to get a permit in Montreal downtown, on average, it takes 540 days.
It's insane.
It's the longest like in the developed world.
Doesn't surprise me.
But it's like we laugh about it and nothing gets done.
No.
And it's all these fonctionnaires who say they work, they don't work. They take their sweet ass time and they have their like unelected officials that have all this power and they abuse their not all of them, but there's a fair number of them that abuse their fucking power, and there's no accountability ever. And it's always so complicated to get anything done. Like the permitting process or to build, to my understanding, it's like no one is ever at fault.
Right.
You know, it's never the mayor. Oh, it's this person for the permitting. Well, it's not us. It's that department over there. Oh, it's not us. It's this.
And none of them talk to each other. And each department has like a bunch of different people working within it that all seem to not really know what's going on. And and then they all have different rules for things and how to attain things. It's I would say like the biggest thing for us right now is just a bit of a, excuse the expression, but a clusterfuck within within the actual municipal, like especially when you're going into public tenders, like it's just unclear. Everything's unclear. Everything's changing all the time. The type of permitting.
What's a public tender? Can you explain that?
Yeah, so basically like there's a few different types of projects that you can bid on, right? Like so an industrial project that's in the private sector, that would typically just be a business that says I want someone to come in and redo my plant, so people can quote on that. Then there's more like commercial sector, so you've got like more like our schools and our hospitals, things like that are also funded by obviously the public sector as well. And then you have like more things like the roads, so like roads and all of those things that all classifies under public. So like through each of those different kind of, I guess, avenues, there's different rules and regulations. So a lot of the times you'll have general contractors who are specialized in different types of projects just because they know more the ins and outs within those. But like you said, those issues, especially when it comes to the municipal or provincial level, I think there's just so many different levels of people working and no one really knows what their role is, and they all
but
kind of...
when you're getting, sorry to cut you off, when you're getting a project, let's say for example a road, so would a general contractor who specializes in building roads, are they dealing with the municipal and the provincial government when it comes to getting permits, or would it just be with the municipal?
I'm not super familiar with that side because we're more like private and commercial sector, but to my understanding, I think it depends on, like, everything's zoned a certain way. So like if it's a small road in Point Claire, you're just dealing with municipal bylaws. I think if it's like the 40 here, like what's been going on, that's federal. And then there's like different roads that are more provincial. I think all the bridges for the most part are provincial.
Federal.
I know Champlain's federal. I think the Illitourt is provincial, if I'm not mistaken.
I could be mistaken.
I think it's provincial because I think that one, part of the reason that everyone's like up in arms is that it's been like 10 years that the provincial government hasn't done a thing about it, and now they're like, oh my god, it's actually about to fall. Who knew that these like hundreds of thousands of people moving over to this other island would need a big bridge? Who could have thought of that, you know?
Yeah, it's like I don't know, there's something, they were talking about it on the All In podcast, there's something in the West, in Western culture, Western society, Canada, the US, Europe, Australia, like Western society, like, I don't know, I feel like it's breaking. Like something's going on right now.
Something's going on for sure.
There's a lot of stuff going on. My theory, honestly, this is one of my theories, and I think it's going to get worse. Especially since COVID, there's so much debt that, and they keep printing money. So during COVID, they printed a bunch of money. Everyone knows they printed a bunch of money, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to shrink the balance sheet." They're never going to shrink the balance sheet. They can't do it. And whenever you print money, the middle class or the people that don't have assets are the people that get hit the hardest, because inflation is just a hidden tax. And so all the people with the assets just get way more rich. So it's like another theory of mine why golf courses are doing so well since COVID. I think since COVID is the only thing to do, but also golf is a well-to-do sport. So people that are going to play it typically already have money. They probably own a house, and everyone's house doubled in value since 2020. So they're worth twice as much. So let's say, for example, they're worth $1 million. Now they're worth $2 million on paper. They have all this disposable income. And they're like, well, I have money, I'm going to go join a golf course. Like Beaconsfield Golf Course where I'm at, there's a list, there's a lineup for people to come in. It's never been this financially healthy, and we never had this many members. I honestly think that, I don't think it's just, it got really popular over COVID. I honestly think the upper class in the West Island is a more well-to-do area. I honestly think that because everyone's housing value went up and their stock portfolio went up, just all the people with assets got richer on paper. I think they're like, and they're all older, they're all baby boomers, they're probably retiring. They're like, yeah, I'm going to go join a golf course. I think that's kind of, so just kind of back to, like, if we back up a little bit, I think this is happening in more and more places where there isn't really like a middle class anymore. And there's no middle class unless you have assets. And now also too, for most people in Canada, how do you build your wealth? It's usually through your house. And people our age, we're 35 or even 30 or 25, you're never going to own a home. You will not own a home.
It's pretty much impossible.
So, but it's like, what does that do? So it's like the American dream or the Canadian dream. It's like, you know, you get a family, you get a car, you get a house. So that dream is broken.
And it's just like weighing on everyone all across the country, basically. And especially here, I feel like we're feeling it a lot. Like, I live in St. Henry, you know, and it's like just, they've had to remove like most of the garbage cans around St. Henry because they just didn't have enough people that could go pick up the garbage. And now it's just like there's garbage everywhere. And then like you go back to like these systems that are just, I think that like kind of, I don't know about that exact theory regarding like golf and all that, but I think that theory does trickle well into like some of the reasons by your original question, like why these things are so bogged up. It's like we just have so much like waste. It's not operated, the government, like all the municipal governments, the provincial, aren't operated like a lean private company.
No.
They hire, and they never get rid of people. So it's like, oh, we need a new rule for this, a new rule for that, instead of maybe trying to optimize things and make it simpler. And so that's where, when all these people are coming out and saying, oh, there's a housing shortage, we need to build all these new houses, there's actually nothing that's really been done since then. Like,
housing starts have dropped off a cliff.
They've dropped like crazy. I think I saw a couple days ago, my boss actually sent me from Bloomberg. This was the first month, the month of May, that housing starts actually increased in the last like 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, at a certain point,
but they're still down.
From, if you look at like the breakdown, it's still crazy.
And like the reason, so number one, interest rates, so it's very expensive for people to build. Number two, the permitting process, again, we were just talking about, is insane. It takes 500, so it's very difficult to build. You want to hear another story? So basically, it's called the Housing Accelerator Fund. Okay. So the federal government, to try to incentivize municipalities to build, is giving out money. I think they dished out $500 million across Canada to municipalities. Here's some money, go build some houses.
Go build stuff, yeah.
The municipalities don't want to change the zoning. So for example, if there's an area with a bunch of single family dwellings, the people that live around there, or apartments, because it's like everyone, it's always the same saying, everyone wants affordable housing, they just don't want it to be their house.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you're in the suburbs, there's a city council meeting, they're not going to want to have an apartment complex in the middle of a suburban area. They're just not. And so what the municipalities are doing now, and in Toronto in particular, the money they got from this Housing Accelerator Fund, they increased, or was it Vancouver? I forget which city, but it was a major Canadian city, and they increased the development charges. It was like $50,000. They brought it up to $90,000 per unit of housing after they got the money. So basically, they're getting the money. They're not going to build new housing because it's too expensive now, and the developers aren't able to build because, number one, interest rates are too high. And the development charges are too expensive, so they can't. It's not feasible, because if there's $90,000 per unit to build housing, well, you have to pass that on to the consumer. So they're doing the math, going, hold on, no one's going to be able to afford these houses, so they're not building. And so the fact, when the federal government, the Liberals come out and say, we're going to build 3 million homes over the next, I think they said, whatever amount of years.
Yeah, it was like 5 by 2030.
It's a fucking lie. They can't. They're lying. They're lying through their fucking teeth.
And they know it's not going to happen, right? They're just saying it because they want the votes. But then it goes back to the same thing. The system's broken. And the problem is, I don't even know how we can fix it at this point. Like, it's just like, it's gotten to that level now where it's just like so hard to figure out. Like, if you're just like a random contractor trying to get into this space, like, there's only like a few guys that do all this stuff now, right? I don't know if you noticed that, but it's like you have your top guys in each kind of sector, and that's what it is. And it just makes it so much tougher, again, going back to your point of the middle class, for them to have anything sustainable, because it's just like, unless you're in it and you're with it and you have the money and the capital behind it, it becomes so hard, and it's a big problem. It's definitely a big problem.
And the other thing too, which is going to just further exacerbate this divide between the rich and the poor, the only people today to get into who are younger, who are able to get into the housing market, are people who their parents help out with a down payment, whether that's they have cash or they take out a home equity, they take out equity from their house and give it to them. That's very common too. Or you get the 1% that do actually just have a really good job, or they have a dual income, a husband and a wife. They're bringing in, $300,000 a year or something. That's the only way you're going to get into the housing market right now. And I think it's just a lot of people. And I think this kind of where I get stuck, I am a capitalist, but I'm not surprised why all these people, especially coming out of the school system, favor socialism, right? Because the West is supposedly a capitalistic society, and if you're a young person going, well, I can't even get into the housing market, this system doesn't work for me, I'm poor, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, so I want some assistance, I want some government assistance. They don't know any better that that's actually just going to make it worse, because in order to have more government assistance, you need government to get bigger, which just sucks more resources from
everyone.
So, but they're sold a bill of goods that is also a lie. But in my opinion, what needs to happen is, number one, that they absolutely need to cut the amount of civil servants. They need to shrink the size of government. And if you look at the population growth, we've had a massive population growth in Canada over the past couple of years. This is out. Everyone knows this now. We can't support all these people coming in. But as high as the amount of immigrants, the immigration rate, and the population growth is, the growth of the public sector employees is even faster. So when you actually look at the details of the job numbers coming out and stuff like, oh, wow, we added all these jobs. Look at the details. They're almost all public sector. So the more public sector, the more like people, government employees you have, the more resources it just sucks from the rest of the economy. Sure. And we're not able to do anything. So I think that's one of the reasons why it takes...
Just stuck.
Yeah, you're stuck. But if it keeps getting... They have to put a hiring freeze, or they have to fire some people. They got to do something.
Yeah.
And I'm not convinced that... Poilievre is going to fix anything, because you can't win an election promising to cut spending and fire people.
And that's what I was going to say, is who's going to vote for that guy that's coming in saying your job's going to be at risk if you vote for me, you know? So it's it's such a tough situation. And look, like there's obviously like so many good benefits that we have, especially here, like for obviously our healthcare is like a bit in shambles, but like we do offer, like all my friends now are either pregnant or recently had kids, and like the way that we're structured for like maternity leaves and like follow-ups for that, it's like incredible for that side of the system, I think, and that's like where our money should be going. But when it comes to actually, like you said, we have all these new people coming in, and where are we going to put them? Like this is a huge issue, and we just can't figure it out, and there's just so much bureaucracy behind it. And like on the flip side, like I know that's a thing because I see it in my space, because we supply into this, right? Like plastics goes into all these houses for the windows, the doors, and you're just seeing a steady decline and steady slowdown. And it's like now it's coming to a place where people are just kind of almost trying to undercut each other's business just to stay alive. And you know, it's a market where, like I said, it's very like I guess specialized in the sense of like you need people with experience. Like if you're working an extrusion line, you need someone with experience behind it to properly make this material and make something that's usable in the domain. So you can't find the domain, and it's like, sure, welcome in these people with open arms and train them, and that would be fantastic. But like you said, if everyone's going to the public sector and then they're just actually slowing down the process even more and more, because it's a bad spiral. Yeah, the public sector needs something to do. And I'm not saying there should be no regulation, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be taxes, but like what do we actually get for the amount of tax? We're a heavily taxed society. Yeah. And what are we? I don't think we're getting as much as what we pay into. No. And when you look at all these like programs and stuff, so another example would be like this dental care program. So the dental care program, if you look at, I want to say the province was New Brunswick. So Trudeau put, I think it was $1 billion or $1.5 billion for this free dental care, whatever it is. Okay. 4 dentists in the entire province of New Brunswick signed up for this. And so on paper, it sounds amazing. Oh, wow, you're going to put $1.5 billion towards free dental care for people. That's not actually what happens. It's actually very similar to like UNICEF. Remember UNICEF, where for every dollar you give, 10 cents actually goes to poor people? The people, yeah. It's the same idea here with government. So all the money for these programs, barely any of it actually makes it to the program that's intended to be used for, and it gets sucked up by the bureaucracy. So you get layers and layers and layers of people in government working who basically just suck out the money, and none of the money actually gets to it goes to its intended use. Yeah. Okay, next on the hit list, Poilievre and Trudeau. Dun dun dun. I'm gonna preface it with this, and then I want to hear, because I've been talking too much, so I want to hear your opinion. Yeah, go. I honestly think, I could be completely wrong, the fact that the media finally started throwing Trudeau under the bus, and not necessarily just throwing him under the bus, just reporting facts. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that because he passed the capital gains tax and increasing the capital gains, I think the banks and the people that actually the companies that actually run Canada, I think they made a call and said, that's enough. That's the last straw. We got to get this guy out of here. This is at a time when the company is having a productivity crisis.
the Central Bank of Canada came out. More and more, the banks are all saying this. If we have a productivity crisis, the GDP per capita in Canada has been falling. It's been declining. It's been stagnant for I think 5 years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We're falling behind our quality of the standard of living compared to the U.S. We're falling way behind, not just the U.S., a lot of other companies.
Yeah, the
too.
G7 and all that too.
Yeah,
they're saying.
And again, it's just back to what we were talking about. Government is too big. When government is too big, you can't have a centralized government. You can't have a centralized system. You can't to a point, but eventually, because it's just like a blob.
Yeah.
And nothing gets done. There's no accountability. And I think that's what's happening right now. And I think the rest of Canada is ready for a change. The polls are clearly indicating that. So I'll tee it up for you here. What's your opinion on kind of what's going on right now?
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy in the sense of like how fast this happened, right? The change, like it seems like it was just in January that I was hearing like, oh, Poilievre's got a lead, but Trudeau's still right there, and like there's still a bunch of fight for the Liberals and NDPs alongside of them. And then, like you said, he announces the tax on capital gains, and then all of a sudden, within almost overnight, boom. This guy's getting thrown under the bus by other liberals, old liberals, and it's just like it's a crazy sight. And I guess to me too, it almost coincides with what's going on in the U.S. I still do wonder at what point like these guys really matter in a sense. You know what I mean? Like I think the liberals right now are just like whoever, like you said, the big banks, and I think that's a really good theory. Or just I think people are just fed up. Like people are just fed up of being taxed and not getting anything out of it, and they see cost of living continuing to go up.
Yep.
Yeah, we just did a rate cut, but now it seems like inflation, Bank of Canada is like saying that, there's more trending of increasing inflation.
Yeah, the most recent print was higher than expected. Which means there's probably not going to be a rate cut coming up in July.
In July, so they're saying that, like very low likeliness. So basically no.
Yeah.
And so like I think everyone just got to a point right now where it's like I don't really care what you side. And I think I was very liberal growing up, and now I've slowly I guess it's the age-old tale, right? Like it takes some time. I forget what the slogan is.
The slogan is, if you're not a liberal at the age of 20, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative by the age of 30, you don't have a head.
Yeah, that's the one. So, which I don't know if it's true. Like, obviously, like it's just a funny statement.
I think,
but I think I've definitely trended more towards there. I think I still, on a lot of social aspects, do tie more with the Liberal Party. But I think that
like
now...
What? Like what?
Just in terms of like actual... Like, I'm not someone who really cares too much about what other people want to do. So when it comes to either, we can get into this too. When we get into gender, when we get into, I guess, education and who goes where. I think also for like healthcare system and different avenues that people can explore through that. I think there's like a lot just more openness in the Liberal Party of people to kind of just do what they want. And I think on the flip side, on the conservative side, it's maybe just been a little bit more historically, I guess, very from a religious place, maybe a level of people don't really like a lot of change when it comes to those things. And I just feel like they're sometimes a little less open to hearing the other side. So I think that's kind of...
I would argue with you that historically speaking, I agree. Conservatives were more controlling over what you thought or what you said, what religion you practiced. I think today it's flipped. And I think that, so for example, cancel culture. Cancel culture is basically policing your words and your thoughts.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say anything. You're walking on eggshells all the time. Your opinions, and this is what I find ironic about leftists, the hard leftists. They claim to be open and diverse, but God forbid you disagree with me, you're a terrible person.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just counterintuitive.
Right.
And I would argue today that conservatives are actually more open ideologically than liberals in Canada, at least.
Yeah, I guess like just
like
where...
and I'll just add this one point. Like in Canada, conservatives, most of them do not care about abortion. They actually don't care if you're gay. They're not trying to police your thoughts it's like the notion back in the 90s, like the Republicans in the US, like especially the religious right. Yeah, I would agree that they were kind of controlling. And like I always said, if I was Bill Clinton in the 90s would be like my ideal president,
right,
or prime minister today. But I think all the parties have moved further to the left.
Yeah, they've all shifted. I agree.
Yeah, and I find it's almost like the liberals and the Democrats, it's almost totalitarian. Like they're kind of like they want to control a lot of your opinions and your thoughts and the ideology. And I just find it like it turns me off that like I find that liberals right now, they're almost trying to like erase a bit of Canada's history. And it's like, yes, is it okay that there was slavery and that we took away the native land and all that kind of stuff? No, but shit happens. People conquer other countries. This is the history of man.
Yeah.
This is how it's always been. And the other part where they're full of shit is basically like where they have this land acknowledgement before they say a speech or something. If you're actually that virtuous, sell your fucking house and go live in the forest. Shut up.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it. You're not going to risk your quality of life or your living standards for what you're saying. So put your money where your mouth is, and they're never going to do it. So that's why I think it's a crock of shit. But I'll let you continue.
Yeah, like I see where you're coming from. And obviously when you get to those extremes, like I think on either side, like you're just looking at people that for whatever reason have kind of these really far outside views of things that typically actually do more harm than good because they're just like against everyone else and they're causing a lot of drama whichever way you go. But yeah, all that to say is that I still think that like the original way, I guess, historically that I grew up with those values of like the liberal left have left me just more open versus other people that I know that came up more in a conservative right style when it comes to some of those things. And I do agree that I think everything's kind of shifted. And like you said, the abortion thing seems to be much less of an issue now. And I think with that too, like, as you said, there's just a lot more, I guess, thought that seems to be going into what the conservatives are saying when it comes to actually having speeches and polling and talking about the right things. So again, that's what I'm saying now in my 30s. I see myself associating a lot more with that side. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day too, like for Poilievre, it's a tough platform to run on because there's two things that I can see happening. One is, like you said, it's like, do you have to run and tell everyone I'm going to cut jobs and then I'm actually going to reduce the budget, and so all these people are scared of what's going to happen to them and their cushy, like nice little government job and whatever they're getting paid right now. And then on the flip side,
I just want to say though, like whether he's going to do it or not, he's not campaigning on he's going to cut jobs.
No,
he's campaigning on the big one is axe the tax,
carbon tax.
But he will he cut jobs or have a hiring freeze? That remains to be seen.
Yeah,
but I just want to make it clear he's not campaigning on that.
Yeah, you're right. He's not campaigning on it, and I guess I just read between the lines a little bit. He's looking to axe the carbon tax, and however he wants to do it from there, it's up to them. And then the other thing that I'm like wondering about is like how much time will he really be given? Because to turn this around right now is like, oof, that is a job and a half, my friend. And like, you have these people that are probably on the fence right now, right? But how much time until they're just going to be back on the liberal boat if there's a new representative coming in after Trudeau? And so really, like, I just wonder like how much change can really come out of it. And that's kind of my worry about all this is we're just, again, back to this kind of limbo conversation is it's just really like tough to see a clear way out right now. And I hope his intentions are good, and I hope he has some good pull because it seems from what he says a lot of the right stuff, But at the end of the day, yeah, I think he has to be given a chance. He should be given a chance because it's gotten to a point right now where I'm sorry, but if you're defending Trudeau on like where we're at right now, like I mean, we're in a bad place.
It's not even close. And if you look at anyone with a brain in their head and you ask the question, was Canada better under Harper or was Canada better under Trudeau's leadership right now? If you polled all the Canadians, the vast majority would say that life was better under Stephen Harper.
And I'd agree with that to a certain point, but there's also like a whole bunch of other factors, right? Like you did have the pandemic and you did have a bunch of just like issues that arose out of that caused huge supply chain shortages, and like there's still reasons behind that's a whole bunch of other things that why they're increased in price. So I don't know if you can like really pin everything onto him.
They were the ones to shut down the economy. I know hindsight's 2020, and I know looking back at it now, they probably shouldn't have shut down the economy.
And I think if you asked them, they wouldn't have, most likely, but maybe they would have. I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe there's other plays, and you can ask some friends of ours that are more into conspiracies and things like that, they'll have a whole different theory on it. But I'm just saying, like, flat out, if you look at it like this, black and white, I think I would agree with you, but I think there's also a lot of other considerations and like so many other factors going on in the world right now that it's like hard to compare. It's not really comparing apples to apples.
And that's something too where I'm not like a super big expert on it, but this Ukraine stuff, I don't understand why the West is there.
Yeah.
There's definitely a plan. It's stemming from the Americans, whatever foreign affairs minister, whoever the decision maker is, they're up to something. And I mean, when you actually look at it, Putin specifically said 4 years. This is back when he first came to power, back in the early 2000s. He drew a line in the sand saying, "I will not allow Ukraine to join NATO."
Right.
Because NATO, how it works is an attack on one is an attack on all. If Ukraine now becomes a member of NATO, which to my understanding it's about to be, maybe it is already a member of NATO. Can you just fact check that quickly? If Russia then attacks Ukraine, well, it's an attack on all. Next thing you know, we might have a World War III.
Yeah.
So I think that, yes, I'm not saying it's right for them to invade Ukraine. But what about all the other countries in Africa? What about, there's countries all over the place where this shit happens all the time, and you don't hear a peep from the media.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, why is Ukraine such a talking point? I'm like, what are they?
I think
up
it's
to?
just because Russia's involved, right? And like everyone's.
But do you know what I mean?
About
Like
Russia coming in.
What are they up to? There's.
You're saying
it's not part of it.
You're
But like it's weird. Like,
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions in the back of my mind. I'm like, why all of a sudden is this such a big deal for you guys? Why are you picking on Russia when there's a lot of other countries in the world and different continents and stuff? There's war going on all the fucking time.
Right.
How come we never say anything then? And like now, the fact, my main concern is, like what I just said earlier, if they join NATO, that could lead to a World War III, which is not good. That's my main concern, and I don't know what they're after. So that's kind of where.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that's another one, right? That like you ask most people in the U.S. too, and the same thing. They would definitely rather not be involved in that whatsoever. And again, I think it all comes down to who's pulling the strings at the end of the day behind all these leaders, and for whatever reason, it maybe has some type of advantage for them, either financially or in terms of politics or resource. Like, there's definitely reasons behind that we don't understand. And yeah, I think that's a huge topic for like that we could go off on for probably a few hours.
But it's kind of like, and I'll just give an example of when they went into Iraq. So when they went into Iraq, Dick Cheney, the former CEO of Halliburton, the contracts for like all the food, for building all the tents, for supplying all of the weapons, everything went to Halliburton. Yeah, the company that he used to work at. And then we look back at it now. There was never any weapons of mass destruction. They never found anything, and they basically pulled the sheet over our eyes, and they pulled a fast one on everybody. So the point I'm just trying to say is I don't know what they're up to for Ukraine. I'm not a geopolitical expert. But
we'll find out eventually.
My feeling is that they're up to something similar to what happened in Iraq. And looking back at it 20 years later, the historical books are gonna be like, they went into this place. Why the hell did they go in there? They shouldn't have been in there. And I think it'll be the same thing with Ukraine. Why is the West there?
Yeah, I agree completely with you. I don't think we'll find out for another 10 or 15 years, most likely. It's just gonna be one of those things where there's a lot of like idiosyncrasies that probably go into that, and a lot of other people that make those calls that are pushing for whatever agenda that they have going on. And I don't know, is it something about, like you said, resources, environment, trying to push some type of new agenda for fuel? I don't know. It's a great question. I'm not very well versed in that, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think it's definitely like a mistake on our part to have just like gotten involved in that. Like, look, I am Ukrainian. I'm half Ukrainian, and like there's also a lot of good that came out of like the initial support that went into it. I think a lot of these people were just going through like literally like hell and war and like didn't have anywhere to live, and we brought in a bunch of refugees, and I think it's like incredible some of the things that like people were able to accomplish, and some of the money that was like put into there really like helped to get that done. But at the end of the day, I think we're kind of now in a weird position where it's like you're kind of now in a battle with Russia, and now Russia is like putting all these like
they're kicking Ukraine's ass.
Kicking their ass. And like they're basically just now like siding with China, and now all of a sudden there's all these tariffs that are happening, and now the U.S. is trying to put tariffs against China, and in the long term, it seems like the U.S. like, so for example, like just actually going back to my industry, like the U.S. will put a tariff on China, let's say, because they partner with Russia on something, so they'll put an export tariff, but now we have a certain additive that goes into one of our a huge amount of our products that the only plant in North America just shut down. They basically just decided it was too much to upkeep. The capital was no longer there. So whereas the only places we can get it, Europe and China. So now when you bring it in, there's a huge export fee that you pay. So our price goes up, and then what happens? Our customer's price goes up, and at the end of the day, the consumer's price goes up. So it's like all these like political decisions that people sometimes think, and like the president, like Trump will say like, oh, we're making America better and stronger. Like that's not always the case, because a lot of the time it's the consumer who ends up eating that whole thing. And meanwhile, the politician's the one left looking like the hero. And then they wonder why like prices keep going up for things like that too, like, so it's all tied in. Like,
yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that either. But I think with the reshoring of manufacturing, that's a really good example that you just gave. But the world right now, war could break out.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to debate that. Like, we're a lot closer to war, to global conflict today than we were, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone will agree with that statement. And when that happens, you're absolutely right. So the countries have to start reshoring. They have to start reshoring their microchips. They have to start reshoring energy production. They have to start reshoring, because if you're in the middle of a war and you're 100% dependent on, for example, Taiwan, which let's say was to get invaded by China, if you're 100% dependent on them to get microchips, that's a big problem, because we fight tech wars.
Yeah.
If you're 100% dependent on Russia to get gas, like Europe was, that's a big fucking problem. And look at what happened, because they want to shut down all the nuclear plants in Europe, and they were 100% dependent on Russia for natural gas. But do you know how many like companies and people? Did you see the energy prices when this war broke out in Europe?
It was insane.
They were insane.
It was insane.
And I think that over time, like this is just another thing. Like this war will absolutely, I think, be more. It's the additional because of the reshoring of resources and production. Everything is going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
It's more expensive to produce something here in comparison to China, for example. It just is.
For sure.
And that's going to add further to the cost of living. And I think when you start to explain it to people like this, and there's actually just like, oh no, it's wrong that they invaded Ukraine, we should help them. It's like, okay, but do you actually understand all the consequences? And is this actually the best case scenario for our country right now? I'm not saying that it's right what Russia did, but there's a lot of things that happen in the world that are not right.
Yeah.
And we don't stick our nose in there.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that this could actually break up into a global conflict, and we're closer now than ever to like a third world war, I'm on the side where I don't necessarily agree with what they're doing. And Putin, just to go back to it, he made it crystal fucking clear 20 years ago. I draw the line here.
Yeah.
If you do this, I will. No.
Yeah.
I will not allow this. And what did they do? They went in anyways.
They went in. Germany, he's like, oh, you want some coal? You want some oil? No, shut you off.
Yeah.
Right before winter.
Yeah.
That was another thing. Didn't they come? Yeah, they came to us asking for LNG, no? Liquid natural gas.
They did. Yeah.
And we were supposed to open a huge plant in Quebec for it, like billions of dollars of new GDP money that could have just poured in. And they were like, no.
What I think happened.
Hydrogen that we don't even have.
Yeah.
Really established anything yet.
Yes. So it's
but
like
I get it. Like environmental too. I think it was up by like Saguenay or whatever, which is a pretty beautiful area, and they probably just didn't want a bunch of like mining and processing going on up there. But like these are calls you got to make at the end of the day, right? It's like cost of living is going up for everyone, and people are fighting for green this, green that. But at the end of the day, who's ready to pay for it? And
well, we're seeing that.
I think a lot of people are not ready, and they'd rather it go back the other way where life was actually affordable.
You're absolutely right. And it's like, we'll see how green you are when it's $3 a liter for gas. I'm not saying it's that right now, but we're all on our way. And we'll see how green you are when you can't afford to eat and you can't afford to feed your children anymore.
Yeah.
And people need to understand this. And this is why, back to kind of like the liberals, I feel like the liberals are typically upper class people. They're
Right.
well educated,
Right.
and they have these luxury beliefs that don't pertain to the average person. And because they don't have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck, they're able to be green and they're able to buy that electric car because they can afford it. Whereas someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, someone who needs to go to the food bank, they're not worried about green energy. They're
No.
worried about feeding their family.
Yeah.
And if one person's going to promise to make it less expensive in comparison to another politician, they're going to vote for that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like I have a really tough time listening to liberals sometimes. They're not all like this, but the ones with their noses up who have all the money waving their finger in your face saying you should be driving an electric vehicle
Yeah.
when you can't afford to feed your family. I got an issue with that.
Yeah. And on the flip side too, we don't even really have the infrastructure for everyone to be able to drive an
That's the
electric
other
vehicle
thing.
either, right? So
I saw a video the other day. This was hilarious.
Think about the permitting for that one.
Yeah, I saw. Fuck. Yeah. Who's gonna build the grid?
Yeah.
The government's gonna build the
There
grid
you
for
go.
it. Yeah, right.
There you go.
I saw a video the other day. You can't make this shit up, man. This was hilarious. So it was on TikTok. So they have all the Teslas, because like you can drive. You have Tesla charging stations. So they had all the Teslas there. They had all the charging stations. Yeah, being electric. Guess what it was powered by? Like literally, like about 100 yards out.
What?
A diesel generator. I'm not kidding. I'm not fucking
Where
kidding.
was this?
Somewhere in the U.S. But it's
Oh
basically
my
like, so the
God.
guy is just like, he goes, you can't make this stuff up. You're like, well, what am I looking at? It's like a charging station. And he goes, he pans
over.
it there. It's charged. There's a diesel generator charging it so that they can charge their cars electrically.
Yeah.
So it's funny stuff.
Anyways, it's all backwards. It's all backwards right now. And,
Yeah. So if you had to answer, I mean, you don't have to answer the question if you don't want to. In that next upcoming election, would you say you'd vote for Trudeau, or would you vote for Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah, I'm not afraid to say it. I'll vote for Poilievre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that out loud. No problem.
And what do you have to say to somebody who's like, you're a bad person? What would you say to them? A diehard liberal, lives in the West Island, lives in Hudson. You're a piece of shit.
Wow, don't bring my hometown into this.
What would you say to them?
I don't think I'd say much. I'd probably say, like, if you're judging me based on who I'm voting for just because I'm looking for a better quality of life right now, and I see where we're at in terms of economy and what cost of living's at, and I have kind of a first-hand perspective that's even kind of, I think, broader through the manufacturing side than a lot of people get into it. Mm-hmm. If you're really judging me on that, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's pretty much it. It's very straightforward for me. I'm a very calculated person, and the math's not mathing right now. You know, there's there's too much money coming out, and what we're getting back from it, it doesn't make sense. It's just not. It's not working.
One of the things I like having conversations about you is like, you're one of those people. You have like there's some people that no matter what they'll vote liberal.
Right.
You have some people that no matter what they'll vote conservative, and you're part of that middle of very reasonable thinking people that can be persuaded, and you're not loyal to one particular party.
Right.
You're going to look at like what your options are. You're not really going to get caught up too much in the ideology. You're going to go, which bill of goods would I like to purchase today?
Yeah.
And kind of, which I think is the best way to go about it. I don't think it's good. You know, like right now, I would most likely probably vote conservative as well. But that's not to say, and you know, I voted liberal before, and that's not to say in another 10 years that I won't vote liberal again. Who knows? Maybe I'll vote NDP. I doubt it, but maybe one day.
I just think it's crazy too, though. It's like, you know, everyone our age, especially that we're talking to right now, it's like I feel like we're all kind of living the same truths, like the same kind of thing is going on to all of us. And I just find it so wild that like so many people can be going through this same situation where, like you said, it's like you can have a combined couple's income of like over $100,000 a year and basically be living paycheck to paycheck. And it's like tough to have a kid. You can't have a house. It's really scary stuff. And it's insane to me that like so many of us are going through it, yet you haven't really been hearing much about it from anywhere in terms of like the political side of things, because it's just like these people in power, just like you said, it's the older people that have just been there, and they're slowly becoming, I think, a change of guard over time, but it's becoming too little too late soon. And if we don't change something soon, I don't know what's going to happen.
I just feel like too, for politicians, and I was listening to a podcast about this, it's not something that's like, you can go into political science, but there's not like an actual training for politicians, like how to become a politician. And I feel like a lot of time, not always, but a lot of times it gets like the riffraff. So it gets people like, why would you want to go into politics? There's a lot of gaslighting. There's so much there's so much lying. And I just feel like it's not getting the best, it's not getting the cream of the crop of people. So like if you look at a really successful business and the CEO and he's the founder of the company, that person, I promise you, is going to be very smart. He's going to be calculated. He's probably going to be a good listener. He's going to have really good hard skills that he can, add productivity to society. Yeah. And I feel like politicians, it's not like that often. Like I remember sitting down, I was at this table for a fundraiser event, and there were some civil servants, I won't say which municipality, but there was people that work for the city there. One of them was in charge of giving permits for building, ironically enough. And these people were bozos. Yeah. And I'm like, you guys are the lawmakers? Like I was just sitting, I didn't offer any opinion. I just wanted to ask questions. And I was just like, I'm like, I want to see what these guys are like. Yeah. And so I sat there for like 2 hours, just asking, spoke to everyone at the table. Bro, scary. Yeah. And I'm like, these are the people that make our laws.
And that's it. And they have no clue. None. They're just on, half the time they're on their righteous tip, or they're just doing it for the spotlight. And this is their one chance to get to be heard by everyone, because they grew up not very successful or cool. Like, I mean, I'm obviously generalizing. Like, I know a couple of people that work for the government and they do like really good work, like municipal, provincial levels. But yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of the times at the end of the day, these political kind of roles, it's a tough job, man, especially nowadays with social media. Like you're just getting shit on like 97% of the time, like literally by everyone. So it's like, it's a tough career, and it's like these lifelong politicians, like you said, they all end up getting corrupted at some point. And it's just like, it's like back in the 70s or the 60s, whoever was the president was like the top CEO, I feel like, would have been like promoted to that level.
They had a lot of influence.
It was like so much more influence and like just so much more renowned as a role. Whereas now it's just kind of something that like, oh, you just throw whoever in there that you can control the best with all the cash behind, and it's like, you're fine, So it's like at the end of the day, I think that's the other concerning part about this whole thing, is that if the people we're putting in are just like not well qualified or don't have an understanding of how to actually improve a process, like they've never worked in a private sector where you have to like optimize a system or like literally like merge roles to give to someone, create value. Like if you don't have these right people in those roles, like no wonder our system is just getting worse and worse, right? And it's just getting more and more bureaucracy behind it, and bureaucratic. Thank you. And it's definitely a tough job right now.
And I guess we'll finish with this. Like, how do we? Everyone feels kind of the same way, and right now it's like. So, for example, the big thing in Montreal with the Cafe Ferreira, where that became a really big story, and I was really happy to see people finally. And Valerie Plante got a lot of heat for that, as she deserved,
for sure.
It's nice. That was very nice to see people finally starting to push back, going, "Yo, enough's enough, man. This is too much. Yeah. I'm not your little bitch. You work for us, not the other way around." So, what can we do as a society to fight this blob from taking over like every aspect of our life. And I'm not saying get rid of all the social programming, stuff like that. I'm speaking more particularly about permitting processes, for example, language laws. That's a whole other debate we won't get into. But just what do we do to fight back against these people that keep taking more and more? They keep implementing more rules.
More rules, yeah.
Yeah. And if we don't follow it, you got to pay a ticket.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do?
I think for me, at the end of the day, it's really like, having these conversations and realizing that more and more people are I think, frustrated by it and talk about it and push back. Because at a certain point, the government will have to figure out, if enough people like uprise and roar about it and say like, look, this is enough and we need to actually figure out a way to say build houses and do this and do that. They're going to have to bring in people from these businesses and these contractors to tell them, okay, this is how you have to align it. Like, you have to just make it very simple process, make it clear, and identify what we need, and then we can go ahead and do it. And all these extra fines and these extra implications of interest rates and everything, those have to go away, at least while we're in this crunch for the next couple of years trying to get out of this. Like it's just, I don't know, like at the political level, because obviously I don't really touch on that very much, but I think just having these kinds of conversations and talking about it and people pushing back, like the Ferreira thing, I think that was fantastic. Like, who in their right mind is going in on the biggest weekend of this company's, like, of this business's year, Grand Prix?
It's embarrassment.
And like, it's the only city. I was out at Bar George on Friday. We were seeing our friend Eric DJ, and it's like you get 40 cops come in and just like raid, I don't even know what. Like, it was just a party. Yeah. And it's like, guys, it's the biggest weekend of the year. It gives our city such a bad look. And it's just like all these things that just kind of like add on and add on and add on. And I think it's like, like you said, when's enough? And we just got to try to keep educating ourselves. And man, if there's some good people out there, like, hopefully they want to get into these politics and try to make these changes, because at a certain point, it's like it's getting too far, and I think it's way too complicated.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's too complicated. There's too many rules. Mm-hmm. I'm a bad example because I don't like rules to begin with. But like, I lose my mind when people come in and they're like, you need to, like, I was walking my dog the other day. The public security guard comes up. He's like, you need to put your dog on a leash. And I was in a good mood. So, and he was young. And I kind of said, I'm on my way out. So it's no problem.
Yeah.
And then he goes, is your dog registered? I'm like, nope. He goes, why not? I said, I don't know. She's not registered. He goes, you're going to have to get her registered. I went, right away, bud. And I just left. But it's just like shit like that. And I get this whole other, like, having a dog and a leash debate and stuff. It's a golden retriever. She's 10 years old. She doesn't need to be on a leash. I need to run her and stuff like that. And I also understand it's like, well, not every other dog could be doing like that. And they have to be on a leash. So I kind of get that part there. But the registration part, the $50,
should just be free.
Yeah.
Why are you charging me?
It's a money grab.
It's a money grab.
It's a money grab. And like, this is the thing. People need to understand that that's a money grab. You don't need to register your dog. Yeah. It's a money grab. Yeah. And all these little ticky-tack permits that you need to pay and all this kind of stuff. Some municipalities, if you want to do interior renovations on certain things, you're supposed to have a permit.
Yeah, correct.
Fuck off.
It's insane.
Fuck off.
So many people just go ahead and do it, obviously.
As they should.
Like, what, I'm going to wait like 500 days to get my permit?
But people need to understand that it's a money grab. The government will present it as like, oh, well, we need this because of this, and that. It's important to have it. It's for your safety. It's a money grab.
Yeah.
Just like this stupid carbon tax. It's a money grab. All these new taxes, and they can't tax their income anymore. Mm-hmm. So they're finding all these other little ways to keep taking in more and more and more money.
Yeah.
Well, how about this, guys? Stop coming in on my life. How about you cut your spending? And by what I mean by cut your spending is shrink the size of government. You don't need this many people working. Stop coming up to me trying to take more money from me and tell me what I am and what I'm not allowed to do. Stop.
And stop running these massive deficits that you have no plan to pay back.
But it's like more and more people are moving away from Canada. A lot of productive people are moving away from Canada, and this is not a sustainable path that we're on. If we continue doing this, a lot of people say right now Canada is a sinking ship. I hope they're wrong. I'm not sure if we will fix this, but I know that one way to fix this is to shrink the size of government and the amount and when I say government, I'm talking about federal, municipal, provincial. I don't hate all civil servants. There's a lot of good ones that actually do good work, but there's a lot of ones that we don't need to be there.
I think you got to try to find someone. I'd be interested in learning more about that, like what someone that's actually in it, their thoughts would be on how that would even be possible, you know, how you go about like realigning the government and trying to like optimize that. Because as of right now, all I know is they just keep adding more and more roles.
Crazy.
Like, I think I might have told you this actually. I just remembered. I forget what it was, but it was right around the time when they were announcing about how they need to have more housing and we need to speed up the process. And there was one municipal borough, and what they determined, I want to say it was almost maybe Point Claire, but I could be very wrong on that. Anyway, what they determined they needed was to hire someone else and mandate them in charge of all the other people that make the rules for that city's like bylaws to be approved. So they basically just added a whole other layer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's like, where's the logic? Like, there's none.
None of them actually work. They outsource. Sorry, not none of them. A lot of them don't work. They outsource a lot of the work to consultants.
Yeah.
And then these consultants, I do insurance for some consultants in Ottawa, and one of the questions we asked to get a quote is, what's your annual revenue?
Mm-hmm.
There was this person, this lady, she works for herself. She consults on how to she consults with the federal government on how to make departments more efficient.
Right.
Her annual revenue for herself was $500,000 a year.
Perfect.
But people see, if you know someone in the government, like, people need to understand that there are leeches. There's a fox in the den. There's a fox in the den.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that. There's a lot of people that come in and go, well, it's so easy to grab money from the government. Why not just go ahead and do it?
Yeah.
And so the more taxes, it's like, yes, we need taxes to fund our society and the welfare state, but it's gotten to the point now where it's such a shit show and it's so loose and there's no consequences. People are like, oh shit, well, it's free money. I'm going to go do that.
Yeah, I'm going to take it. Or I'm a general contractor and I have no penalty if I'm working directly for the government to be delayed and add extra charges because of extras and this and that weren't in the scope of work. And the government always, like, everyone who I know that works with the government, the one thing they'll tell me is they always pay. They always pay.
Yeah, because it's not their money.
So it's not their money. It's so easy, right? So it's like,
yeah.
How frustrating is that? Like, they take all this tax money from us, and then everyone that comes up to them and says, "Oh, I'm billing you this because of that." Here it is.
Yeah.
There's no checking,
cool.
no one there to like make sure, you know. So
yeah. And like the last thing, I'll end on this example. So Stephen Guilbeault, our environmental czar. So he had, he's Mr. Green, and we're all gonna die if we don't implement the carbon tax and da. So he can't make this shit up, man. He's invested in a green company. Is it green energy or wind or solar? Anyways, it's a company that it's a form of green energy.
Yeah.
He's an investor in it. I don't know how much. And surprise, surprise, that company got a $200 million grant for their green energy initiatives. Like, you can't make this shit up, man.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the corruption. That's where we lie.
It's corrupt. Canada is way more corrupt than people think.
Yeah, I agree.
And people need to wake up. People are starting to wake up, which is nice. And again, I'm not saying we need to just cut all spending, cut social programs, cut welfare. It's not what I'm saying. But it's gotten to a point now where they're fleecing us.
Yeah, and we got to start asking questions. I think that's the first thing. Is like, it's one thing that for people to just become complacent and just say, "Oh, cost of living is going up. It's harder." But until people start asking questions and finding more answers for themselves and talking to other people, I think like once that starts to happen and more people actually push back a bit on it, then until then it's just gonna keep getting worse, really.
Yeah. But the cost of living, though, too, for the housing. So Trudeau said this in the same sentence. I'm not even kidding. He goes, we can't let the housing market fall because it's tied into people's wealth,
right,
especially baby boomers about to retire. It's like, we can't let it fall, but we need more affordable housing. He said that in the same sentence. But that's the other thing, too, for the housing. And this is the part where I think it sucks. Poilievre's not going to fix that either.
No.
No one's going to fix this.
No.
And the housing prices can't fall by 50% because then the banks have a problem and all the pension funds have a problem.
Yeah.
We're like, I think what they're going to try and do is probably just bring in less immigrants so the supply can kind of catch up, and it'll correct itself a little bit. Are we going to have a massive crash? I don't think so, but who the hell knows?
Who knows?
But
and then less immigrants also means like less workers, right? So like some of these jobs that now like we're needing to start fill, we're gonna have trouble with that too. So who knows what that could lead to? But like at the end of the day, I think maybe I shouldn't say this, but I don't think it can be tearing much worse than it is right now from what I'm seeing. I do see some signs of life, and I think that the economy, people are still resilient, and we do have our big brothers to the south that seem to still be battling on down there. So I think like we've been talking about the gloomy stuff, but I think there is still some positives that seem to be coming. But yeah, it's definitely like a huge thing with regard to regulation and all the rules and zoning. And yeah, I would love, if I was still in that, maybe it would be something interesting to look at, but it'd be interesting to get someone's perspective that has a little more insight on that to see if that's even feasible, you know?
It's just like if we're overregulated.
Yeah.
Overregulated, overtaxed. If we could cut back a bit on that and just let the private sector flourish again.
Yeah.
And when the private sector flourishes, as everyone knows, that's more corporate, that's more revenue for the government because they get to tax more profits.
For sure.
And that helps society as a whole for Canadians. So, I guess we'll end it there. End on a good note.
Yeah, a little positive. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Jay. This is the Freemium Podcast, and thanks for all those that tuned in.
Thanks, guys.